Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar. We'll go through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. As over the next 48 hours we are going to see quite a big change. Over the past month we've seen largely westerly winds, relatively mild and very unsettled. However, by the middle of this week we're seeing those winds veer to an easterly. Now, initially, it doesn't look like it's going to be a particularly cold easterly. Remember, this time of year, we can still see some very cold conditions. 6 years ago now, we were in the midst of the beast from the east, where it was bitterly cold and early February with easterly winds. This easterly wind is going to be not particularly cold at all, at least initially. Temperatures largely going to be still around average. The field light temperature, though, will probably be below average. I think the big thing we'll notice, though, is the precipitation. Now, it isn't going to be bone dry. There will still be showers around, as we'll be able to see on the latest UKV. But definitely for at least a few days this week, we are going to see widely drier conditions. By the time we get to the weekend, some runs are trying to actually bring the Atlantic back in, which would turn us unsettled once again. Other runs, like the ECMWF, hold on that higher pressure, hold on to those easterly winds, and even turn us perhaps a little bit colder as we head into the following week. So still all to play for, but easterly winds coming this week, turning drier, being pretty chilly, and then we start to see some uncertainty in the longer range. Definitely today, I have seen a bit of a trend from the ensembles for perhaps more cooler runs developing today. So upper air temperatures going below average, maybe even some going significantly below average. That definitely has trended in the ensembles today, but the operational runs are definitely not as confident or as bullish on it. So we'll have to see in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. If you start on the live radar, you can see we have got a weather front progressing from the southwest at the moment. But if we were able to pull the live radar back 6 hours or so, this rain band was a lot more intense across southwest England, where we have seen a pretty horrible day, or at least first half of the day. However, now this area of rain is really losing its intensity and kind of petering out across much of eastern England into just more thicker cloud and a bit of drizzle. And the reason for this is because this weather front is coming up against the higher pressure to our east, which is sucking the energy out of the weather front, giving a rise in pressure, essentially halting that weather front, weakening it significantly. So that's why it is really degrading away at the moment. Eventually, as I said, by the middle of the week, the high pressure will be in full control, and these weather fronts won't even make it to the southwest. If you put on the temperatures today are about 7:15, chilly in places, still some colder air further northwards. Of course, we have some chilly conditions over the past week or so, but nothing too crazy. Frost still look likely in places over the next couple of days, but it will all be dependent on cloud amounts and precipitation. Now, if you look at the latest UKV and go over to the precipitation initially, you can see that weather front approaching from the southwest initially, fairly well developed, fairly succinct and fairly heavy. However, you can see over the course of this evening, it kind of turns into nothing, into bits of patchy rain into the early hours of Tuesday. Still precipitation in places, but nowhere near as heavy or as widespread as it comes up against the higher pressure. Eventually into tomorrow, you can see the wind starts to veer to more of an easterly in the southeast corner, which, as you can see, there's not too much precipitation around, but it can actually stall that precipitation. So where that precipitation does occur, it could actually be drizzly and raining all day. So that is one bad thing we have from this transition. It means wherever the weather front and these showers stall and turn more to an easterly, we could see quite a bit of rain there, or quite a lot on and off rain through the afternoon. But as we head into the evening, we do see some showers coming in from the east, but largely we are starting to turn drier. And by Wednesday afternoon, yes, a few showers around, but generally another pretty dry picture and clear skies in some areas. Will be a relatively pleasant day. Of course, chilly under the easterly wind, but relatively pleasant. Into Thursday, you can see weather fronts out to the west trying to push out to Republic of Ireland and get pushed backwards and dissipate away. Again, few showers through Thursday into Friday, but again, we can't rule those out, but for most it is quite a bit drier. As we get into the weekend, though, the UKV tries to turn the wind more from a southerly, which would push more precipitation in. Now, the main reason for this is because this low is approaching from the southwest, really trying to push in. Uncertainty whether the high pressure or the low pressure will win out, but essentially it lowers the pressure over the top of us and veers the wind to more of a southerly direction with warmer air masses, more energy, essentially meaning higher chance of showers. I must emphasise not all runs are going for that, but that sort of pattern is plausible and could mean into the weekend we could see a reintroduction of heavy rain, or at least heavy showers in place, especially in the south and southwest. Now, if you look at those max temperatures, you can see overnight tonight a frost developing in a few areas behind that weather front, but most are still above freezing. Tomorrow, temperatures around that 7 to 10 degree mark, so generally around average for the time of year, but of course feeling chilly in places. Into Wednesday, again, could be an isolated frost further westwards under clearer skies, and by the afternoon, again, we're looking at 10 to 11 degrees. But as that wind starts to veer into an easterly direction, the feel-like temperature will drop as we do have that brisk wind. It will definitely make it feel more like mid-single digits or even low single digits in places. So it's not going to feel particularly mild at all, even though the thermometer temperatures don't look too bad. As we head into Thursday, it's a similar picture really. Overnight temperatures dropping down to the low single digits, but most not below freezing. And again, we're looking at sort of 7 to 12 degrees. The same pattern into Friday. Again, perhaps a bit of a frost, and by the afternoon, maybe a little bit more towards 12 to 13. That could be because that southerly tilt is arriving, so slightly milder air. And you can see the same can be said into Saturday, where again, maybe 13 or 14 degrees. Because of course, if a southerly wind started to move in, it could turn milder, because that air would be definitely dragged more from sort of Spain and Portugal and the Mediterranean, which this time of year is starting to warm up. So it would increase those temperatures probably above average, but that is dependent on if we see a southerly tilt. If it remains southeasterly or easterly, we're not likely to see anything particularly mild off the back of this period. If we do look at the latest GFS, we would see what that is showing. You can see easterly winds starting to arrive over the coming days as the high pressure starts to dominate. Initially it's a southeasterly, turning more easterly, but the GFS disintegrates that high pressure into the weekend, and then we see low pressure coming off the Atlantic, and it stays unsettled and actually pretty horrible into the longer term. Eventually high pressure tries to return, but really after another week or two of horrible conditions, wouldn't put much backing on that. So unfortunately, the GFS breaks down the high pressure by the end of the weekend and turns us westerly and horrible again. I don't know if that is the most likely scenario. Definitely from the looks of the ensembles, it's not. But definitely interesting, the GFS has been fairly bullish, initially on a big high pressure system building, and then the last couple of days breaking it down relatively quickly. Now, if you look at the GM, see how that does compare. Again, easterly winds arriving, initially east to southeasterly, low pressure trying to push in by early next week, but still holding on to the easterly for at least a bit of a block to our east, but it's nowhere near strong enough to completely halt Atlantic systems and to push in colder air. So in the end, we actually kind of stay in the middle with a wedge of milder air, southerly winds, with those winds coming up from Spain, as you can see if you follow those isobars up, and with low pressure around, we are unfortunately likely to see quite a bit of heavy rain associated with that. So this is a sort of pattern that if you want thunderstorms in the summer, it's almost perfect, but if you want something a bit drier, it's not particularly great, as it does pull in a lot of moisture from the south or southwest, and it is relatively slow moving with those lows, not moving through quickly, meaning the rain hangs around for longer. So it's a sort of pattern where you get those trapped lows, and where a sunny high pressure system could actually cause us to be pretty horrible and wet instead of sunny and a little bit warmer. Now, for you compared to the ECMWF, which I must say is the coolest and driest run today, you can see the easterly winds arriving, high pressure dominating, and the wind does eventually go full easterly. And by day 10, the high pressure hangs on, and you can see that division where that milder plume is much further out in the Atlantic. So what this means is we're under the higher pressure, means we are widely a lot drier, but also colder air is nearby, so more likely to see cooler conditions. Again, nothing particularly cold. We need to see these darker blues and purples across parts of Scandinavia and Siberia and Russia to see that, but that's not looking likely at this stage. But a colder pool you can see there across Northern Europe, that is plausible, but it is again going to be one we have to just watch for. You can see with the accumulated precipitation, yes, a few showers in the southwest initially from stalling weather fronts, but for most you can see it's quite a bit drier than southern areas to the south of us or west of us over the next week. So much better conditions than what we're seeing now, but you can see still perhaps some rain in the southwest with those weather fronts trying to push in. So easy to do, if not perfect by any means for dry conditions, but a whole lot better than the GFS and the GEM. Now, to finish by looking at the latest on ensembles, you can see the GFS is definitely a little bit chillier today. Not massively, definitely a few cooler runs appearing, and the ensemble average is still around average or slightly below average. Precipitation is slightly higher in the longer terms, perhaps. But definitely perhaps seeing some stalling weather fronts around, but definitely no signal for a big Atlantic push. You'd likely see milder upper air temperatures for that. Sea level pressure not dropping massively in the longer term, still staying around 1010 to 1020 millibars, so no huge deep areas of low pressure. So that does essentially give us a good indication that the Scandinavian high doesn't look like it's going to dissipate away completely, but yes, could lose some of its strength. Dew points don't look amazingly cold, but there are some colder runs which would be drier and continental, so air driven with that. And then if we compare to the ECMWF, which definitely has cooled down quite a lot today, you can see quite a marked drop down around the 12th or 13th in 8 or 9 days time. That's where the operational run started to try and pull it up proper easterly, whereas you can see other runs not so much. ECMWF ensembles definitely though showing a lot more cooler or colder runs in the longer term. So this could be very much one to keep a very close eye on. Again, I wouldn't have too much confidence in anything majorly cold coming, but definitely a lot drier conditions over the next 5 days or so. Beyond that, quite a bit of uncertainty. Could go drier and stay, could go colder and stay drier, or could go slightly milder, most likely stay around the same temperatures, but turn quite a bit more wet and windy from the southwest. So we'll just have to see what happens over the coming days, but at least a few days this week, where we could be seeing widely dry conditions and maybe quite a bit of sunshine for some. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.